Coming up on My Mother, My Daughter.
Did she tell you why she put you up for adoption?
My grandfather made her.
My mom was molested by my grandfather pretty much her whole life.
What was going through your head at the time?
I had a really hard time developing relationships with women.
Did you ask what happened?
I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't. I was so angry at him for everything that had happened to me.
And I see, this is part of the story I had never heard. I'm like, wow. Hello and welcome to My Mother, My Daughter. I'm Dr. Bessie Fletcher and I have an exciting show for you today. Today we have Jaime Cowhick with me. Jaime is an old friend. I guess you would say for the many years she's been helping us with our projects when we work with mothers and daughters, especially the women that we work with out of the prison system that we're trying to help to create a better lifestyle once they leave the prison and move back into what we call the world. Jaime's story today is going to touch your heart, and it's going to be an education for a lot of people. And even if it's not for you, you're going to know someone that you're going to want to share the story with. So I want to welcome Jaime Cowhick. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me.
We're shaking hands because that's just professional, but we are friends, really. Okay. So, thank you for coming in. I am excited about your story, even from the very first time I heard your story when we had the Butterfly Awards and you were the recipient. Your story touched my heart. And that's been a few years ago.
Yeah.
And from, of course, you've been with us and you've helped us and come in and talk to the ladies that we're working with out of the Work Release Center. And you sharing your story and sharing your heart and coming in and speaking. I mean, the last time you spoke it, we were so impressed because you had every Bible verse to match what you were saying. And it elevated me and Professor Oliver because we was like, we got to up our game. We're talking, but we got to say what we're talking about and who said what. You know what I mean? So meaning the word of God. But what I want to share with the audience today is your story is a heart-wrenching story, and we're going to try to stay on track, but somebody out there is going to be touched. And what I want you to do, today we got my mother, my daughter. Today we're talking about my mother. Am I right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your mother.
I was a product of a teen pregnancy. And then because of drugs, I was put up for adoption. Actually, I was put in foster care first and then was placed for adoption. There was a lot of lies that was associated with my adoption. And my mom ended up she passed away, but my biological father is still actually an active addict today.
Well, how old was your mother when she passed? How old were you when your mother passed?
31.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a while. Did you have any kind of relationship with your mother during those 30 years?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that. What type of relationship was it?
I always felt like I had this huge hole in my heart, not knowing where I came from, and not really feeling any type of mother connection. Even with relationships with women, like I had a really hard time developing relationships with women. And whenever I was 19 is when I went to go find her.
Okay.
And then I thought that all these wounds are going to be, binded up, and they weren't.
Okay. What was the effect when you met her? How did you feel? What happened?
I was very lost because I didn't know how to process all the things that she told me.
Okay.
Especially when it came to her family and what happened before.
Did she tell you why she put you up for adoption?
My grandfather made her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think that contributed to her, you said she was addicted to drugs. Do you think that was a product of that, or was that something she was doing prior to your birth?
No, that's something that she was doing for quite a while.
Okay.
That's how she met my father.
Okay. And then now you talk to her. I mean, give us the picture. Did you hug, you cry, you share? Did you ask what happened?
It was, even meeting her was like such a cool story because I was in the town where I was born, and I was with my adopted parents, and they were at like some family thing. And I told my parents, I'm like, I really want to go. We had an address. I'm like, I really, really want to go. And so we ended up going, and nobody was home. And then we ended up like going to the mall or something. I don't remember. But we went, I told my parents I wanted to go back before we left. And she came behind me and was like, "Can I help you?" I took off my sunglasses, and she was carrying a bag of groceries. And she dropped all the groceries on the floor.
Oh, wow. She recognized
Yeah,
you.
she knew I looked just like her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she knew immediately who I was.
Yeah. And what was her first words?
She was like, "Oh my gosh," and she just grabbed me. Yeah. Okay. And then my great-grandmother was alive at the time, and she was the only one that saw me when I was born. And after I talked to my mom for a while and stuff like that, she took me to go meet my grandma.
Well, something happened though. I mean, you met this connection, and you really bonding in that moment. But then, what happened?
I don't even, like, it was so hard for me to process it once I left that day. And she was telling me, you know, that my biological father used to prostitute girls out. And it was a lot for a 19-year-old to hear. That about molestation. My mom was molested by my grandfather pretty much her whole life, and two of her sisters. So that was, and they didn't even know for the longest time if I was with my or if I was my grandfather's or not. Like, because she was getting molested by him at the same time.
So she wasn't sure if you were her sister as opposed to sister and daughter.
Yeah.
Now this is getting really interesting here. Now see, this is part of the story I had never heard.
Yeah.
So this is, I'm like, wow. Okay, so now we got this part, and you're still not sure if your granddaddy is your daddy.
And it took me a good probably 6-7 years to find out who my biological father's side was.
Okay, so now you know.
Yeah, now I know today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to bring this story forward. Now that you've done that, and your mother, do you see your mother now? I just want to get that.
My mom committed suicide.
Oh, she committed suicide. Yeah. Sorry to hear that. And I did know that, and I apologize. I'm so deep in the story that I forgot that your mother did commit suicide. And what happened in your mind and your heart when you realized your mother committed suicide?
I was always suicidal myself. So, but when you hear about it from like a survivor aspect of knowing someone that close to you has done that, it really affects you differently. And, you know, I've had the thoughts, but I've never acted on it since that. And it's been a while now.
Kind of scared you straight, right?
It did.
You know?
It did.
Now, what happened to you once you got out on your own? You were telling me about your boyfriend and your relationship with him. How can you share that in a way that you can, and I know people don't want to put everything out there, and I wouldn't even ask you to share what you want to share about your relationship with your boyfriend and what you went through.
Actually, right when I met my biological mom, I got into an abusive relationship that was extremely physically abusive. And like, we got into a fight one day, and he put me at knife point and threw me down a flight of stairs. And so that was all what I was dealing with after I met my mom. And then I left to go to Kentucky to go to school, and that's when I met my ex-husband. And when we moved down here, we got divorced about a year later.
In Florida?
Yeah, yeah. And that's around the same time as when I met the guy that I told you about. He trafficked me for on and off for 8 years. I was trying to get out of it, and he would find me. And
so when you say traffic, you explain that, because some people may not know trafficking you, what that means.
He was sex trafficking me. He was making bets on me on who would make the biggest money on whether or not they could sleep with me. We were going to strip clubs, and he would make sure that he would be gambling on, and I would be the prize.
Wow. What were you going through? What was going through your head at the time?
I had no idea. After I went through my divorce and everything else, I didn't even know what I was thinking. And I was bed corrected a couple of times. I wanted to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day I was driving on 95. I lived in Coral Gables at the time. And I was at Hard Rock. And I was partying like crazy. And I drove at like 125 mile an hour on 95. And I didn't care what happened to me. I just wanted all of it to end. And I had 2 abortions by him as well.
So how did you get away from him? I mean, you're free now. We know the part of your story that you're going to end up telling here. But what was the breaking point?
There was a program that I really wanted to do at my church.
Mm-hmm.
And people were kind of tired of hearing about me going back to him, going and then, getting away and going back to him. And they told me if I wanted to do this program, it was called Living Waters. And if I wanted to do this program, that was it. I wasn't going to be accepted into the program if I didn't cut everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to change my phone number. I had to cut every single tie, friends, all of it.
Yeah. How long was the program?
It was a year.
A year.
Yeah.
And that was your door opening to freedom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go back to who helped you walk through that door.
I did not believe, I knew God was out there, but I was so angry at him for everything that had happened to me. And whenever I had my abortions, you kind of already know that, you could have been aborted yourself. So why did you do that? And my abortion stopped me from being able to have kids. And so I was living in Plantation, and I was driving by a church, the same church of the name that I grew up in, which was the Lutheran church. And I finally made an appointment with the pastor to go see him. And it took me months to even make this appointment, because I did not want to go talk to the pastor. And I went, and this pastor never referred any women to Hope Women's Center, to the Forgiven and Set Free Bible Study, which is for post-abortion. And I went, and normally too, they don't let women in there that are not saved. And they made an exception because they knew if they didn't, that I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't.
And I would say, look at God.
Yeah.
That's my favorite word. Look at God, because he shows up. All right. Wow. What an exciting story. I'm telling you, I know that's touching your heart to be in trafficking, sex trafficking, and to be able to sit here today and look the way that she's looking. Something major happened to have a change in her life. And we know who that is, and Jaime can explain her own story. So you don't want to miss the end of this story. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Come on, we can't go away. We don't need them.
On my mother, my daughter.
Did she tell you why she put you up for adoption?
My grandfather made her.
My mom was molested by my grandfather pretty much her whole life.
What was going through your head at the time?
I had a really hard time developing relationships with women.
Did you ask what happened?
I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't. I was so angry at him for everything that had happened to me.
And I see, this is part of the story I had never heard. I'm like, wow. Welcome back to My Mother, My Daughter. What an exciting show today. I'm talking to Jaime, and Jaime, before we leave, I know, like I say, I can give advice, but I can't give the testimony. See, that's a key. That's different. Advice, testimony. What testimony will you share or can share with mothers and daughters that's out there that's in your shoe? Because, a daughter's not going to tell her mother she's being trafficked. She's not going to tell that she's being raped. She's not going to tell that somebody is doing something to her because, unless they have a certain relationship, and even when mothers don't have a very close relationship, it's hard to tell your mother. The one person that I always say you should be able to tell your mother anything, but that's a hard thing to do. And mothers have to be watching. You have to be watching to see the change in your daughter. And I always say, when you see a change, stop right then and there and address that change and don't move forward until you figure out what the answer is. That's how we do it. Now, had your mother was there, maybe you would have talked to her. Maybe you wouldn't. Now, maybe this was your destiny. But God's going to use your life story to be a blessing to somebody else. So what would you say to a mother and daughter out there that might encounter what you had encountered?
Even with my adopted mom, we have never had a close relationship today, even that we don't have a close relationship. And any time that I have ever wanted to share something with her, I haven't been able to, because I don't feel like, not necessarily that I can't trust her, it's just there's a lot of judgment that I have felt with her. And I still feel today. There was a lot of verbal abuse when I was growing up, so I hear those words in my head. But I would just say, be best friends with your mom or with your daughter, whatever, and try to talk.
So you have a relationship with your adopted mother, and this is the one you're saying is still kind of difficult.
Right.
But I want you to go back deeper than that. I want to go to that moment when you were by yourself. Nobody was there, and you're struggling with these intro conversations going on in your head. What decision to make?
Yeah, and I would isolate so bad. And I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want any relationships. And like I say, women relationships, forget about it. I would have rather done life myself than to try to establish a relationship with a woman that as any type of a mother role.
Yeah. And that happens a lot. When mothers and daughters get along, the family get along. When mothers and daughters don't get along, people don't want to come to Thanksgiving dinner. They don't want to come for Christmas because they know once they get there, mothers and daughters going to act out and nobody wants to put up with that foolishness. I'd rather go get me a sandwich from a little store across the street than to go and have dinner with them because I know it's going to be chaos. I'd rather have my peace than to go in there. It disturbs the whole family. But to have someone such as yourself, didn't have your biological mother, and if you go back and I was to talk to your biological mother, if I was to talk to your mother, I guarantee these were women that had good intentions. They loved you, but life, they just didn't know what to do. Maybe they didn't get what they need in order to give you. So when you look back at it, you can say what? They helped me become a better person. Because in Ezekiel 16:44, that's the foundation of our ministry. God says, as is the mother, comma, so is the daughter. You can't change that. So mothers, if you out there and you're not being a godly woman, then your daughter is going to follow your footsteps until one day the word of God is going to come across her path. Somebody's going to say something to her that changed her life. Somebody told you about God.
I was crying out to him even before that, God, please, help me. I want to change my life, help. And that was in 2010.
Well, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So give the audience the good news. The good news is she's on a wonderful track. Life is going well. He's going to come and grab your hand and he's going to lead you on. You just got to keep following him.
Yeah.
So where are you on that trail right now?
And it's funny you said that because whenever I did Shelter from the Storm, which is a Bible study, self-help type of thing for sexual abuse, that is one thing that I realized the most on how much God was actually holding my hand through all of it. So it's funny you said that. But I met Cynthia, like you mentioned, through Trinity International University. I got my bachelor's there in psychology, and Cynthia is a graduate of TIU as well. And then I went on to get my master's. I am going to be finishing my master's in less than a month now.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, in mental health. All this year I've been doing my internship, which I was at University in Miami, working with HIV clients. And then I was also doing women in distress for about 8 months. And I just got accepted into a PhD program, which I'm going to be starting in January. It's exciting and scary all at the same time because it's like so many changes going on in my life right now. I'm in that season.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my professors for my master's always said, when you get closer to your calling, the more trials are going to be. And it's been an interesting year.
Oh, that's life.
Yeah.
You're going to have the tests that I call them a test because, as I was saying just a few minutes ago, it will not happen without faith.
No.
I'm the only one in my family, even today, that's still saved. So, yeah.
Or maybe God wants you to go and get your family.
Yeah, you never know.
So that's it. That might be your journey.
Yeah, you never know.
Save a family, Jamie.
Yeah.
All right, that's our show for today. I know she touched your heart. Please share the story with someone else because someone needs to know that God can set them free. I'm Dr. Bessie Fletcher, and we'll see you the next time on My Mother, My Daughter. Be blessed.